There is a kind of quiet you only get a few miles past the last road. No signal, no neighbors, nobody coming past. That quiet is the whole reason people go out there. It is also the reason nobody hears you notice. My name is Mike. I've been doing data entry for a mid-sized insurance company for about 5 years now. It's not exactly a thrilling career. And let's be honest, camping alone is probably a symptom of not having much of a social life, but hey, it's cheap and it's quiet. This all started about a week and a half ago when I decided to take a few days off and head into the woods. I booked 3 nights at Blackwood Creek State Park, a walk-in backcountry spot. The permit cost me $35. My plan was to drive up Monday morning, hike in, set up camp, and just exist until Thursday. I packed my usual gear, a 2-man dome tent, sleeping bag, small cooking stove, water filter, and enough freeze-dried meals. Early October is perfect. Cool air, no bugs, and the leaves were just starting to turn. The trailhead was about a 2-hour drive. I parked in the designated backcountry lot, grabbed my permit, and set off on the Ridgeview Trail. My site was number 11, about 2 miles in. The map showed it was one of only 5 sites along that stretch, each marked by a small wooden post and spaced at least a 1/4 mile apart. I remember checking my phone when I crossed the old wooden footbridge over Willow Stream, just about a mile in. It already showed no service, which was fine by me. That was the whole point. I kept a good pace, my pack settling comfortably, and after about 45 minutes, I started looking for the small wooden post marking Site 11. I rounded a bend and there it was, tucked into a small clearing just off the path, marked by a faded wooden sign. My site, number 11, wasn't empty. There was already a tent pitched there, right in the usual spot. It was a cheap, generic-looking dome tent, a faded blue, the kind you pick up at a big box store for $50. It was zipped completely shut, and there was no other gear outside it. No cooler, no backpack, no chairs, no axe, no fire pit setup, nothing at all. Just the tent, sitting there, silent and still. Not even a single piece of trash. I stood there for a minute. A double booking seemed unlikely for a walk-in site, but not impossible. Or maybe the person was just taking a quick stroll to the nearby waterfall. I figured I'd give them the benefit of the doubt. Site 12 was only a 1/4 mile further down, and usually it's first come, first served, so I took that one. I shrugged, adjusted my pack, and kept walking. It was a minor inconvenience. I got to Site 12, set up my tent, filtered water, and cooked dinner. Evening passed uneventfully. Next morning, Tuesday, I did a longer hike to the overlook, passing Site 11. The blue dome tent was still there, exactly as I'd left it, zipped shut. No gear, no sign of life. I figured they must be on an even longer day hike. That's what I told myself. When I returned, I checked again. Same thing. The tent was still there, unmoving. No new footprints. No sign anyone had been in or out. The fire ring looked completely undisturbed. No ash, no charred wood. It was odd. By Wednesday morning, the 3rd day, I was really starting to notice it. On an early walk, I passed Site 11, and the tent was still there. Nearly 48 hours. Nothing. It felt less like active camping and more like someone had just left a tent there. I even stopped and walked a small circle around it, just looking. It was like a display, not a campsite. Wednesday evening, as the sun dipped, I was by my small fire, stirring instant mac and cheese. Suddenly, footsteps. A man walked into my clearing. Tall, late 40s, scraggly beard, faded green flannel. Small day pack, no other camping gear. He stopped, smiled. "Hey there," he said, raspy. "Sorry to bother. Site 11 is my reservation. Got in late, saw you here." I explained I'd been here since Monday, that a tent was already on 11, so I took 12. He nodded, still smiling, eyes darting. "Ah, I see. Plenty of room, right?" He chuckled, dry. "Just wanted to make sure everything was all right. Saw your little green camping stove. That's the exact Soto Windmaster I use. Good choice. But I noticed you keep your spare car keys on the small carabiner attached to the left front pocket of your pack. The black Osprey one. You should really keep those deeper inside, just in case." My blood ran cold. My spare car key was indeed on a small black carabiner, clipped inside a zipped pocket on the inside of my Osprey pack's left front pocket. There was no way he could have seen it unless he'd been inside my tent or watching me unpack from very close. I just stared at him, spoon halfway to my mouth. He kept smiling, then gave a small wave. "Well, good night," he said, turning and disappearing into the twilight. I didn't say anything. My heart pounded. I scrambled into my tent, fumbled for the carabiner. It wasn't there. My spare car key was gone. I tore through the pack. Nothing. It was gone. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sounded like footsteps. I kept thinking about that tent on Site 11. What if it was a decoy? First light, Thursday morning, I packed up in a frenzy. I was getting out. As I hoisted my pack, I noticed something else. My food bag, which I'd hung high in a tree about 20 feet from my tent, was now hanging from a different branch, slightly lower, and the rope was tied with a fisherman's bend, a knot I didn't even know. It meant someone had taken it down, messed with it, and put it back up. They had been in my camp while I was sleeping, or away yesterday. I practically ran the quarter mile to Site 11, desperate for answers. As I approached, I could see it. The blue dome tent was no longer zipped shut. The entrance flap was wide open, flapping gently. I stopped at the edge of the clearing. Cautiously, I stepped closer, peering inside. It was completely, utterly empty. No sleeping bag, no pad, no backpack, no gear, no signs of anyone ever having slept in it. Not even a single leaf or speck of dirt. It was spotless, like it had just been pitched there, untouched, for 3 days. But it had been zipped shut just yesterday, and the man had claimed it was his. I hiked out of Blackwood Creek like a man possessed. My heart hammered. At the park office, I burst in and explained everything to the ranger: the tent, the man, the missing key, the food bag. He listened, then typed. Site 11, he said, was available and unbooked for the dates you specified. No record of anyone else reserving it. My jaw dropped. But there was a tent, and a man, he said it was his. The ranger just shrugged. People do weird things. We can check, but if nothing's stolen besides your key, not much we can do. I felt like an idiot. I should have hiked out immediately on Monday and reported the tent, or at least photographed it. But I hadn't, and now my story sounded crazy. And that was yesterday. I drove straight home, hands gripping the steering wheel tight. My apartment feels different now, not safe. Every time I look out the window, I wonder if someone's watching. Every creak makes me jump. My spare car key is still missing. I've rekeyed my apartment, but that just feels like a Band-Aid. Sometimes, when it's completely quiet, I swear I can hear a faint, dry chuckle. like the one that man made in the woods. I don't know who he was, or why he was there, or what he wanted. But I know he knows where I live, and he knows I don't have a spare key anymore. My name is Sarah, and I manage the inventory at a local hardware store, which isn't exactly thrilling. It pays the bills, though, and it lets me save up for the occasional big trip. This all happened late last summer, when my older brother Mark and I decided to tackle a rarely traveled 4-day backpacking loop deep in the Bitterroot Mountains. I'm the kind of person who always overpacks, so my 50-pound pack was a constant reminder of my need to be prepared for every possible scenario. Mark, bless him, just laughed and called me a Sherpa. We were averaging about 9 miles a day, sticking to the faint, overgrown trail, and the routine was always the same. We'd hike until around 4 o'clock, scout a decent spot for the tent, always near a water source, but not too close to the creek bank, and ideally a bit sheltered. First thing, we'd pitch our 2-person Big Agnes tent, stake it down, and unfurl our sleeping pads and bags. Then came dinner prep. Mark would usually filter water while I got the stove ready. Once we'd eaten, all food, trash, and toiletries went into my bright yellow Bear Vault 500, which we'd then carry at least 75 yards away from the tent, ideally behind a thick stand of trees or a large boulder, and strap it to something sturdy like a heavy log or a small tree that wouldn't budge. It was a well-oiled machine, developed over years of backpacking together. Boring, maybe, but efficient. On the second morning after a long, steep climb the day before, I woke up feeling surprisingly refreshed. I unzipped the vestibule to reach for my trekking poles, my trusty Black Diamond Z poles that I always staked upright, just outside the tent, right next to the fly. Except they weren't there. I blinked, a little groggy, and scanned the immediate area. I found them leaning casually against a thick ponderosa pine, about 30 feet from where I was sure I'd left them. They were upright, almost as if someone had placed them there carefully. It was weird, but I figured I must have put them there myself and just forgotten. My memory isn't always the best when I'm tired. "Hey, did you move my poles this morning?" I asked Mark as he was packing up his sleeping bag. He paused. "Your poles? No, why would I do that?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I found them over by that big pine, and I was sure I left them right here." He looked at me, then at the pine. "Huh. Weird. Maybe the wind knocked them over and they rolled." It was a calm morning. Not much wind at all, but I just shrugged again. "Yeah, probably. Or maybe I just put them there and forgot." We both just kind of accepted it as one of those strange, unexplainable little things that happen sometimes in the woods. People do weird stuff, even to themselves, but then it happened again. That evening as we were setting up camp, I clearly remember putting my MSR water filter, which I just used, tucked inside the vestibule. The next morning it was sitting neatly on a flat, mossy rock about 10 feet from the tent door, sparkling clean, almost as if it had been washed. Nothing was wrong with it. It was just relocated. And then, on the third night, Mark's hiking boots, which he always left splayed out and untied outside the tent, were now facing the tent, laces neatly crossed and tucked in. We started joking about it, calling it the Forest Concierge, half amused, half perplexed. It was always our gear, never damaged, never taken, just moved a short distance and placed with an almost deliberate neatness. It was starting to feel less like wind and more like a very particular ghost. Or maybe one of us was just sleepwalking and tidying up. We both denied it, of course, but it was the only rational explanation we had left. The morning of our fourth day, the last morning, we woke up before dawn, planning an early start to get back to the trailhead. As the first hint of gray lightened the sky, I unzipped the tent to step out and froze. Both our pairs of hiking boots, Mark's and mine, were sitting side by side, perfectly aligned, right in front of the tent door. The laces on both were meticulously tucked in. Mark, still half asleep, leaned forward to look. He went still. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice dry and strained. "Look at the dirt right by the vestibule. There's a set of fresh prints, not ours, leading right up to the tent. And they're still there." I could only see the boots from my angle, but he was looking past them at the ground, and the tone of his voice was enough to make my stomach clench. He didn't have to say anything else. We weren't alone out here, and someone had been watching us sleep. The rest of that day was just a blur of unease. We were on high alert, constantly scanning the woods. When we stopped at a small creek to refill our water bottles, Mark pointed to the mud on the bank. There was a second set of footprints, clear as day, alongside ours. They were different too. A narrower, longer tread, almost like an extra-large hiking boot with a worn, uneven heel, like a boot that had been resoled once. They led only in one direction, downstream, and then vanished where the water got deeper. A few hours later, as we crested a rise, we saw something that made us stop dead. My bright yellow Bear Vault 500, which we had meticulously placed and secured that morning, was sitting squarely in the middle of the trail, about 50 yards ahead of us. We approached it cautiously. It was closed, but the lid was loose, not fully latched. Nothing inside was missing, but I knew for a fact I had tightened it so hard that morning it almost hurt my hands. Later that afternoon, as we hiked through a particularly dense section of old-growth forest, we noticed that one of the guy lines on our tent, the one near the back of the vestibule, had been retied. Instead of the simple taut line hitch we always used, there was a perfect figure 8 follow-through knot, cinched tight. Neither Mark nor I knew how to tie that. Then, just as the sun was starting to dip behind the peaks, casting long shadows, we rounded a bend in the trail and saw it, Mark's old Pexels headlamp, which he swore he'd packed deep inside his main pack pocket, sat glowing softly in the middle of the trail, pointing directly at us. We picked it up. It was still warm to the touch. We were 11 miles from the trailhead, and it would take us another full day of hard hiking to get back to the car. Turning around would mean losing a day, and we were already running low on water and getting tired. Who would we even call out here? There was no cell service, no ranger station for miles. We briefly considered ditching our packs and running, but that was a ridiculous thought. We had to keep going. We couldn't just abandon all our gear. Looking back, I should have ignored the supplies and the mileage and just run. We should have turned around the second we saw those footprints. That was our mistake. We kept walking, feeling eyes on our backs the entire time. We made it out. We made it home, but I haven't been back in the deep woods since then. And that was late last summer. I still hike, but I never go alone. And I never, ever leave anything outside my tent at night. Because even now, sometimes I swear I can hear the rustle of leaves just outside my apartment window, and I know it's not the wind. My name is Mark. I'm 36, and I manage a little hardware store in Helena, Montana. It's not the most exciting career, but it keeps the lights on, and I enjoy helping people find the right bolt for their fence or the perfect shade of paint for their living room. This all started about a month ago when my two best friends, Dave and Steve, and I decided to go on our annual camping trip. We've been doing these trips for years, always trying to find a new, more remote spot. This year, we settled on a drive-in site deep in the Lolo National Forest in October. We picked Site 14, known for being pretty secluded. Getting there was a journey. After turning off the main highway, it was a solid 11 miles of winding, bumpy gravel forest service road. No cell signal for at least 5 miles before the turnoff, and definitely none once you were on the dirt. It felt properly isolated, which was exactly what we wanted. At the entrance to the campground, there was the usual wooden kiosk, a faded bulletin board, a map, and a locked steel box for self-registration. Above it, a stack of blank paper tags and some golf pencils tethered to the board with string. The drill is always the same. You fill out a tag with your name, your vehicle license plate number, your campsite number, and your planned departure date. You tear off the stub and drop it into the slot on the steel box. It's tedious, but just part of the routine for getting a spot in a national forest. I wrote down Mark Harrison, my Montana plate 23B4567, Site 14, and Saturday, October 22nd for our departure. I folded the stub and pushed it through the narrow slot. Just a formality, I thought. We spent the rest of that first day, a Wednesday, setting up camp, gathering firewood, and just generally enjoying the quiet. We had a good fire going by dusk. Around 7 in the evening, as the last bit of light was fading behind the ridge, we heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A truck passed our sight slowly. It was an older model, a dark blue Ford F-150 with some noticeable rust on the wheel wells and a dent in the tailgate. It was barely moving, almost idling, and what struck me was that its headlights weren't on. In the fading light, it just ghosted past us, no wave, no acknowledgement. It kept going further down the road, deeper into the forest. Dave shrugged. Wonder where that guy's headed this late. Probably hunters, I said, poking the fire. Or maybe someone just checking out the sights, or even a local taking a shortcut. People drive these roads all the time, especially out here. Steve nodded. Yeah, could be lost or just joyriding. It's a pretty public road, even if it feels remote. We didn't think anything of it. It was just a passing truck on a forest road. Nothing unusual at all in the mountains. We shrugged it off, went back to telling stupid stories around the fire, and cracking open another beer. The next night, Thursday, we were settled around the fire again. Same time, around 7 p.m., we heard the crunch, and sure enough, there it was again. The same beat-up Ford F-150, unmistakable with its faded paint and that specific dented tailgate. Again, it passed our sight incredibly slowly, almost creeping, and again, no headlights. Just the faint sound of its engine and the crunch of gravel as it went by. This time, we definitely noticed it more. There he goes again, Dave muttered, a little less casually. Still, we figured it was probably nothing. Maybe a local coming home from work or someone with a cabin deeper in that we didn't know about. By Friday evening, our third night, we were actually kind of waiting for it. We'd even started placing bets on whether it would pass. Sure enough, right around 7:05 p.m., there it was. The same truck, the same slow pace. No lights. It felt like a ritual now, a strange, predictable routine. A bit odd, but still not threatening. Creepy, but harmless, Steve joked, though his voice had less conviction than before. Later that Friday night, around 9 p.m., the fire was dying down to embers and we were thinking about turning in. The air was getting pretty chilly. We heard footsteps then, not a vehicle this time, but the distinct crunch of boots on gravel coming from the road. We all looked up. A man emerged from the dark, walking casually towards our site. He looked to be in his mid-50s, average build, wearing a faded plaid shirt and a dark baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He walked right up to the edge of our firelight, maybe 15 feet away, and just stopped. He didn't look menacing or even particularly friendly, just observant. He had a slight, almost unreadable smile on his face. He looked at each of us in turn, then his gaze settled on me. "Evening, boys," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "Looks like you've got a nice setup here, Mark. Staying till Saturday, are we?" My stomach dropped like a stone, straight through the bottom of the earth. I froze. I hadn't told him my name. We hadn't talked. Not a word. And the only place Mark and Saturday were linked was on that flimsy paper tag I'd dropped into the steel box at the entrance miles down the road. He just stood there for a second, then gave a little nod. "Well, good night then." He turned and without another sound, walked back into the absolute darkness from which he'd come. No truck sounds. He was on foot, miles from anywhere. We sat in stunned silence after he left, the only sound the crackle of the dying fire. Did he just say your name?" Dave finally whispered, his voice hoarse. We didn't sleep much that night. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl made us jump. We kept checking the tent zippers, listening for footsteps. We were too spooked to even talk about it beyond hushed questions. The next morning, Saturday, we drove out to the registration kiosk, needing to see something. Our paper tag for Site 14 was gone. Not just slipped out or anything. The little slot for Site 14 on the board, where the stub would have been pinned, was empty. Every other site still had its tag, flapping in the breeze. Ours was just gone. We went back to camp, feeling a growing dread. Dave was getting water from the creek, and he called us over, his voice tight. About 60 feet back from our campsite, right at the tree line, facing our fire pit, was one of our folding camp chairs. The green one, the one I'd bought at Walmart last spring. It was set up perfectly, as if someone had just finished watching us. That was it. We freaked out, packed everything into the truck immediately, throwing gear in without organizing, just desperate to leave. As we drove out, just a quarter-mile down the forest road from our site, there it was. The beat-up Ford F-150, parked across the entire width of the narrow forest road, not blocking it completely, but angled so we'd have to drive right by the driver's side, window to window, to get around it. Nobody was in it. We had to squeeze past, heart pounding, keeping our eyes peeled for any movement in the trees. We sped up as soon as we were clear. We decided we couldn't just go home to Helena yet. We needed to clear our heads, or at least feel safe for one night. We found another campground 20 miles away, a much more popular one, hoping to shake whatever this was. We told ourselves we were being paranoid, but we still chose a site right next to a family with kids. That night, Friday, we were all on edge, but the activity around us was somewhat comforting. Around 3 a.m., Steve let out a choked gasp, jolting Dave and me awake. He'd woken up because he felt a slight breeze. Someone had unzipped the outer tent flap, just the canvas, part way, then zipped it back up again. He hadn't seen anyone, just heard the faint tip, tip in the silence, inches from his head. We packed up at dawn the next day, Saturday, our original departure date. We drove straight to the ranger station in Lincoln, the nearest town. I explained everything to a park ranger behind the counter. A young guy who looked bored, sipping his coffee. He listened, nodding occasionally. "Okay, so you think someone stole your registration stub?" he asked. He went to check the collection box from the Lolo campground, came back a few minutes later, shrugged. "Sorry, fellas. We empty those boxes every Friday afternoon. No tags from Site 14 in there. Must have been an empty site, or someone took your tag before we got to it. I keep going back to that stub. Nobody makes you write down the day you're leaving. There's a line for it, so you fill it in, and I filled it in without thinking about it once. I should have left it blank. That was 3 weeks ago. We haven't been camping since. I still get shivers thinking about it, about that man's calm voice in the dark. I've checked the mail every day since we got back, looking for something, anything, nothing. Every time I drive home from work, I check my rear view mirror, especially when I turn onto my street. My friends are trying to forget it, but I can't. It keeps coming back to me, the way he said my name, so calm, so matter of fact, and how he knew exactly when we planned to leave. I still wonder sometimes about the way those tags work. Who empties them and when? And if anyone ever actually checks what's inside, or if it's just a quiet way to tell people you're there. My name is Chloe, and I'm 28. I've been working seasonal trail crew for the Forest Service for the past 5 years, mainly up in the Cascades. It's not a glamorous gig, and the pay barely keeps my beat-up Subaru running. But I get to spend half the year outside, which is usually exactly where I want to be. This happened just 2 nights ago on a Tuesday, and I'm still trying to process it. Part of the job, especially late in the season, is doing winterizing sweeps. That means hiking out to check sections of trail, clear any new blowdowns, and make sure everything's buttoned up before the real blizzards hit. Sometimes it means an overnight. The Forest Service maintains small, rustic patrol cabins, little one-room log structures with a wood stove, a bunk, and a table. Our section has 2 main ones, Mile 9 and Mile 19. We have a master key for the official lock, but everyone knows the spare is always hidden under a specific rock near the porch, just in case. Inside each cabin there's a logbook. It's routine for anyone to sign in. Your name, the date, and your destination for the next day. It's mainly for safety, so they know where to look if someone goes missing. It's usually just boring entries. I was doing a final sweep of the trail between the trailhead and the Mile 19 cabin with a planned overnight at Mile 9. I'd hiked pretty hard all morning, clearing windfalls and marking braided sections of trail. By the time I reached the Mile 9 cabin around 3 in the afternoon, the air was already getting that sharp, cold bite. It was a good 6 miles in from the road, uphill most of the way. I was looking forward to getting out of my pack and starting a fire. I unlocked the main door with my key, pushed it open. The first thing I noticed wasn't the dust or the musty smell that usually hits you. It was a faint, lingering warmth. Not hot, but definitely not the dead, clammy cold of an unheated cabin in November. The cast iron stove in the corner was still radiating a very subtle heat. I reached out and touched it. It was distinctively warm. My first thought wasn't anything spooky. It was just a little odd. I figured maybe another crew was out ahead of me or a district ranger. Sometimes a solo hiker would find the spare key and use the cabin, though it was late enough in the season that you rarely saw anyone this far out. I shrugged it off. People do weird stuff sometimes. I just thought someone was just here, probably took off in a hurry. It happens. I didn't think anything of it beyond a momentary curiosity. I tossed my pack onto the bunk and pulled out my pot. I grabbed kindling, then remembered the logbook. I always sign in, mainly for safety. I found the thick, leather-bound book under old maps on the shelf. I flipped it open to the last signed page. The most recent entry was from 2 days prior, Monday, November 7th. No name, just the date, followed by a single word in the destination column. Waiting. That was strange. People usually wrote where they were going. Waiting felt off. I figured maybe a new hiker or quirky. But as I flipped back, a cold knot formed, pages and pages of entries, all with the same distinctive tight handwriting. Always just a date, then a single, often unsettling word. Watching, near, listening, coming. No name. Ever. It was consistent every few days, sometimes weekly, going back through the entire season. And before that, last year's entries, same thing. It stretched back for years. Someone had been coming here regularly for a long, long time, never signing their name. I felt a shiver run down my spine, nothing to do with the cold air. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Maybe some local kid's long-running joke, or an old hermit. But the words, waiting, watching, it was unsettling. I was still flipping through the book, looking at the older entries, when my thumb snagged on the very last page, the one with the Monday entry. Below it, in that same precise looping script, was another entry. It was dated today, Tuesday, November 9th, and where the destination column should have been, there was one single line. It wasn't watching or waiting, it was Chloe checking the Lost Ridge section. My breath hitched. My name, my first name, and the Lost Ridge section. That was the exact stretch of trail I was assigned to sweep today, a detail I'd only been given this morning at the office, and which I hadn't told a single soul outside of my supervisor. I'd driven straight to the trailhead from home. Nobody knew I was here or exactly where I was going, except for the office dispatch system. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I slammed the logbook shut, my hands trembling. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was too specific. I stood there frozen, listening to the silence outside. It was getting dark fast. I grabbed my small hatchet and headed outside to split logs on the porch. The minute I stepped off and rounded the corner to the woodpile, I heard a soft, distinct click from inside, the heavy cast iron bolt on the inside of the door sliding into place. I spun. The door was now firmly shut, locked from the inside. My mind went blank with pure panic. I'd been outside maybe 20 seconds. I tried the handle. Nothing. I was utterly exposed in the gathering dusk. After an eternity, another click, and the bolt slid back. The door slowly, silently, swung open just a crack. I stared, heart pounding. I pushed it wider. The cabin was empty, just as I'd left it, but my pack was slightly off-kilter on the bunk, as if moved. I decided I was definitely not staying. I needed to hike out, but as I went to grab my felling axe and collapsible handsaw from the Forest Service tool cache box hidden under a tarp near the cabin's back wall, they weren't there. Empty. I knew I'd left them there. Dread washed over me. I turned back towards the cabin, defeated, and there they were, leaning against the porch railing. My axe and saw, clean, spotless, not a speck of trail dirt. I always leave them muddy. Back inside, I looked at the single small window on the cabin's north wall. It had a heavy wooden shutter that was supposed to latch from the inside, but it was propped open a few inches, held by kindling wedged under the sill from the outside. I tried to pull it shut, but it wouldn't budge. Someone had deliberately jammed it. Darkness had fully settled. I grabbed my headlamp, shining it frantically around. Then outside into the gloom, I saw them. Clear, distinct boot prints in the thin layer of frost. They circled the cabin several times. A complete perimeter. But none approached the door. They just went around and around, always keeping a distance from the entrance, as if whatever made them was watching from the edge of the clearing. I stumbled back inside, slammed the door shut, and slid my own deadbolt. My hands shaking, I pulled out my radio. "Chloe to dispatch, come in." Mike's voice crackled back. "Go for dispatch. What's up, Chloe?" Mike, something's really wrong." I quickly explained the logbook entry, the door incident, the moved tools, the jammed window, and the boot prints. Mike was silent. "Chloe, there's no other crew out. Nobody's within 30 miles. Are you sure?" "Yes, Mike. Someone's been here. They know my name. They locked me out." I should have called the moment I saw my name in the book. But I didn't. "What do I do?" "Sit tight, Chloe. Keep the door locked. Build a fire. Stay inside. We'll send a team out first thing in the morning. Sunrise. Keep checking in hourly." His voice was calm, but I heard the worry. My own mistake then hit me. I had signed my name in the logbook when I first arrived. My full name, date, and mile 19 as my destination. So that was last night. I'm still in the cabin writing this. It's early morning now, maybe 5:30, and the sun is just starting to lighten the sky a little. I'm huddled by the stove, which I finally got going, trying to stay warm. I haven't heard anything since those prints, but every creak of the old cabin makes me jump. I keep checking the window, checking the door. My radio battery is almost dead, and Mike won't be here for another couple of hours. I just keep thinking about that logbook. It's open on the table in front of me. All those entries, all those words. And the very last one, the one written in that looping script, dated today. It says, "Chloe, checking the Lost Ridge section."